Make him stay, Merv. Don't let me leave, Merv. Don't let me leave, Merv. No!
Would that it were so simple tripping.
They don't say tripping, they say the line tripping.
Would that it were would that it were so simple. Would that it were so simple. Would that it were so simple. Would that it were so simple.
You died.
I died.
A little bit.
For how long?
7 minutes.
A bit less.
I died for 7 minutes.
A bit less.
Approximately.
Proud of their jewelry, but of nothing else. Horrible. Faded, fat, greedy women.
They're alive. They're human beings.
Are they?
Of course they are. Of course they're human beings. Hey, Mark here, welcoming you back to another episode of a program where I just do that for 30 to 60 minutes about, I'm sorry, not even looking at the right camera, looking at the left camera. I'm here. I am the Cinemaniac. You are a Cinemaniac. If you're watching this show, you are maniacal to some degree to listen to me talk for an hour with nothing else going on here. Together, we are the titular Cinemaniacs. And again, a very short list of films to discuss this week because I've just been doing other things. But those other things often include watching movies, not necessarily new ones. So if we have time, I'll talk about all the other stuff I watched this week. So we're going to just jump right in because I know everybody has been waiting. I've been behind on a lot of stuff, but this is an actual new release that I saw opening night, first show at a local theater here in Keene, New Hampshire, and it's the sequel everybody's been waiting for to the Disney super hit of a few years ago about princesses. It's a princess. You get two princesses for the price of one of which is a normal, average princessy girl, and the other is an abnormal, above average princessy girl or lady or woman who can turn things to ice. And her name is Elsa. And there is a snowman who talks, and a moose who doesn't, and a guy who has the intelligence of a moose who does, unfortunately. And they're all back together again. This time, they are facing strange goings-on in the kingdom, and they have to go out into the never, the dark woods, and see what is causing problems that may spell an end to their kingdom. It is travails, and it is intrigue, and it is all wrapped up in a package entitled Frozen 2. So the first Frozen was a big hit. It had the song Let It Go, gigantic song, a song you could not escape for a while, be it on the radio or on award shows or on TV or whatever. Very, very huge film, musical, fantastical musical, Disney fairy tale kind of movie. And now, I didn't bother to do the math, how many years later we have Frozen 2. All of the same cast is back for the most part, as far as I recall, all the same characters, and it's a new adventure. Didn't really care for Frozen 2. I'm not a Disney guy. I've seen Disney movies I liked. I grew up watching Disney films in the theater, reissues and new movies, Wonderful World of Disney on TV, the syndicated Disney packages on TV. You really couldn't escape Disney when you grew up in an era of, you either saw it at the movies or you saw it on TV and then later you rented things. But I'm not one who sees the Disney name and gets really excited. If I like the movie, I like it, and if I don't, I don't. This is a situation where I really didn't. I went in with not really interested in the film, but that doesn't stop me from liking things. And it just felt very slight to me. I don't know how you follow up that first film. I commend them on not having it be something simple like, there's a wedding. It was more to it than that. It really is, you get a little backstory. You get the backstory of the two princesses' parents, and they went missing at some point, and the whole team is going off to see what is causing these weather extremes in the kingdom, and to try to stop it before it wipes out the kingdom. And dark forces and spirits and warring tribes and people from the past. There's time travel in this film, kind of. It's kind of cool. And then there's musical numbers, and there's Elsa using her Ice Queen powers, and there's Olaf, the funny snowman, and the lunk-headed dude who's looking to get together with the non-magical princess, and I'm not remembering names because, frankly, I don't care that much. So I went opening night here locally on a Thursday night, and it was pretty well attended. And a lot of times I'm surprised at opening night shows locally are not well attended. I always think that's when all the fans are going to come out and blah, blah, blah. So it was a good mix of ages. There were little kids and there were old folks, and I was sitting in the front row. And the audience reacted pretty well to this movie. A lot of the, and I will say in quotes, funny lines got really good laughs from the audience, which is always cool in a comedy. There were some tender moments that I thought I heard some sniffles here and there. But for me, it just did not work. I was bored. I didn't care. It was really cutesy. We always talk on this show about family films versus kids movies. I feel like a family film is something anybody from any age can go to. Parents can take the child, parents like it on their own adult level, child likes it on their level, and everybody goes home happy. Then there's the kid films. And to me, a kid movie is one that a parent kind of suffers through because it's really aimed at little kids and it's really cheesy and juvenile, and the parent is just mentally disconnected and looking for anything to hang a hook on. To me, Frozen 2 was that. There were some references that were trying to be witty and trying to be contemporary, and some use of language that was very contemporary that I thought was kind of lame. The Olaf character was just annoying to me. He was never funny. He's supposed to be, you know, a happy-go-lucky fool, and that comes across, but the humor was just not there. Like, I saw these things that people were laughing at, and I'm like, they didn't try very hard in the writing on this one, my God. Visuals were pretty impressive, although at times it felt slighter than I thought it should be for a big budget, I guess, Disney film. The music I really did not like. It's not my style. It ain't my bag, this kind of music. This is very, very Disney musical. This is very Broadway musical, which I think I remember thinking about the first film. Very grand sweeping moments and vocal stylings and just song stylings that I didn't care for. You walked out of Frozen and Let It Go was burned into your brain because it was a well-written, catchy song, well-performed. I cannot tell you anything about what was in this film. I don't remember any of the songs. When the songs were playing, I remember thinking to myself, this music makes me want to barf. It was just so not for me. It felt too long. I think it's like 100 minutes or so. There's no short, like some of the Pixar films and some of the Disney titles have a little short film ahead of the film, which I always think is kind of cool. Brings you back to the old days for value added for your movie-going dollar. No short in front of this one. I was really just, it did not connect with me. Now, I have friends who are big Disney fans, and I'm on Letterboxd, the app or the website, and I saw a friend of mine who's a big Disney fan gave this movie 4 stars. So if you like Disney and you like Frozen, you might dig this quite a bit. I am just indifferent. I'm going in as sort of a blank slate for these films, and I was just thoroughly not engaged with Frozen 2. It has the positive messages. It's got the positive female role models. It's got, you know, rectally based humor so that kids will apparently understand that it's animated. I don't know why they do that. But otherwise, it really felt to me like Cinderella 2 or Bambi 2 or all of those straight-to-video sequels that Disney did in the 90s and 2000s to their big, big hits. They would do some smaller scale story that they would just throw out on video. This felt like that. This felt made for TV to me. It just did not feel like it had enough weight for a theatrical film to me. Now, who knows? You may love this. If you like Frozen, you've probably already seen it. If you like Disney, you'll see it anyway. Doesn't matter what this fool's saying. But Frozen 2, I don't particularly care if I have to sit through a Frozen 3. That's all I'll say about that. Speaking of the big F words in movies. This film has 2 F words in the title. This is a true story about the team working for the Ford Motor Corporation in the 60s who were given the unenviable, nearly impossible challenge of creating a car that would beat long-running champion Ferrari at the 24 Hours of Le Mans race in France. How could they do this? It's Ford. It's an American car. It's a standard car. It's not going to beat Ferrari. Well, I'm not going to say whether they did it or not, but this film tells that tale. You got your Christian Bale, speaking with a British accent for once, in case you didn't know he was British. You got your Matt Damon, speaking with a Southern accent. The man's not Southern. And you have other people. John Bernthal, who you might know from the Punisher TV series or The Walking Dead or many other things. They're all together. They're trying to make a car that goes real, real fast, and the film is Ford versus Ferrari. Okay. If you know anything about me, if you know me personally, if you watch this show long enough, it seems bizarre to say it, follow me online, you know that my favorite movie is The Cannonball Run. Cannonball Run was based. I'm going to talk about Ford versus Ferrari. Cannonball Run is based on an actual race that occurred in these here United States from somewhere around. I'm going to get the dates wrong. Somewhere in the early to mid 70s up until the late 70s. 79 was the last official Cannonball. Maybe people keep doing it. Who's to say? And it was about getting from one coast to the other as fast as you could, however you could, no rules. So I have a love of that movie. I saw when I was 7 in 1981. It's my favorite movie. And I have a love of Smokey and the Bandit. And I have a love of car movies. I love 70s car movies. I say 70s car movies is because that's when they really flourished. As you moved into the 80s, they got more flashy and the editing became lame. And then you get into the Fast and the Furious era of cartoon cars and it's just stupid and garbage. But I love a good car movie. I'm not really a car guy. I can look at a car like a ice cream cone on a hot day and salivate over it, but I can't tell you how it works. I pay somebody to fix it, and I drive one that's relatively practical. At least I do right now. So anyway, I dig car movies, and when I saw this trailer, it looked like a good, solid nuts and bolts car movie. It's about speed, it's about flashy cars, it's about going as fast as you can and beating the other guy. Not with a lead pipe, if you can help it. So I was very excited going into Ford versus Ferrari. Not excited, I was very intrigued going into Ford versus Ferrari. And it's a story I didn't know. It's obviously based on a true story. So what you have here is Ford Motor Company. I'm going to give you the briefest overview of this movie. It's pretty simple. Ford Motor Company is not doing great. Henry Ford Jr., the no-nonsense, according to the film, not terribly nice guy who runs the company, is looking to do something to get an edge over the competition or they're going to shut down plants and things like that. A young Lee Iacocca, who would go on to be gigantic in the 80s in the car industry in the US, decides, how about we build a car that will beat Ferrari in 24-hour of Le Mans, and that will be worldwide publicity and that'll really goose our brand. And it's a ridiculous idea to pretty much everybody. He approaches Matt Damon, who's a former race car driver who builds race cars, and Damon approaches, Christian Bale, who's somebody he's worked with forever racing cars, who's just a really good driver who knows the machine and knows how to push the machine and help design a machine. So that's pretty much the story. This film is basically a 2-hour tale of how these various people work together to try to develop, through a lot of trial and error, putting their lives at risk at times, a car that would go fast, hold together, and beat the fastest cars in the world at this. Literally, it's a 24-hour race. The cars are racing nonstop for 24 hours with short breaks. And I thought this was really interesting. Really well shot. It's from James Mangold, who did Walk the Line and another film I'm not remembering offhand, but he's done quality films. And it's a story about people. It's a car movie. It's a car movie that's shot really well. It's a car movie that puts you in the driver's seat at times. It's really well shot. And I say that because so many movies today are camera way too close, camera way too shaky, cut way too fast, and you can't tell a damn thing that's going on. This movie doesn't do that. It gives you the thrill of a roaring engine. It gives you the thrill of racing around a track at ludicrous speed, to quote Spaceballs. And it's a story about people who are trying to do things nobody's done before and crack the nut, figure out a problem. So you have the design team, you have these race car drivers, you have people with various levels of education who know how to do one thing very well, and that's make this machine work. So, and it's set in the early 60s, so you've got that styling going on, you got the really, really good music that keeps being used. They keep using, also an Elvis fan here, in his touring years in the 70s, Elvis did a song called Polk Salad Annie. Most of what he did on stage in the 70s were covers of other people's songs, but he did, to me, the best version of those songs in that era. And you get the original version of Polk Salad Annie throughout the movie. It's used so well. The music is used so well in this. Performances are very good across the board, even the people whose names you don't know. And it's this great, I mean, you can call it, if you want to be really simple, it's a story of American ingenuity, getting the job done, industry and intelligence and just gut feelings coming together to achieve what most people would assume would be impossible. It's very funny at times. It's very thrilling at times. I saw it with shall we say, a much older than me audience. I went to the theater on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, and everybody in front of me was far older than I was, and everybody was Ford versus Ferrari, Ford versus Ferrari, Ford versus Ferrari. So as I always say, it's nice to see a film for grown-ups once in a while, because really most are not aimed at intelligent thinking adults. I'm not saying this is an egghead, super intelligent movie. It's what you see what I'm going to talk about today, and what I generally talk about here. I find myself leaning much more toward realistic stories about people than movies about, human-like horses riding dinosaurs with lasers on their noses. There's a time and a place for that, but more often than not, I look at those and they're just stupid. So Ford versus Ferrari, I quite liked. If you're a car person, yeah, you want to see this movie. If you like history and the old-timey, the way we used to look back then, this is a cool movie to watch. And it's just funny, and fun. The movie's about 2.5 hours long, which seems long when you hear it, but like the car in the film, it moves right along, and it's classy and cool, and it was a really good time for me on a Tuesday night. I wouldn't call it a great movie. It's not one of the great movies, but I think it's worth the money you pay to go see it. So Ford versus Ferrari, still in theaters everywhere. So this is me, talking about movies a week late. Speaking of me talking about movies late, what's 40 years? You get around to it eventually, right? This is interesting. This is a movie that is in theaters now. It's playing in select cities through March. It's touring. A friend of mine, Chris Pajali, who you may know from the Temple of Schlock website, or if you watch a lot of Arrow discs, he's often on DVD, Blu-ray extras for Arrow films and for Kino films. A film historian, he knows a lot about Schlock films and all kinds of film, and paperback series too, which is what ties into this. So this is a film starring Jim Kelly, who, if you ever saw Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee, and Jim Kelly was in that. If you saw Black Belt Jones, Jim Kelly was the star of that. One Down, Two to Go, Three the Hard Way. A lot of like blaxploitation films of the 70s. I don't think his career went too far into the 80s. He was a martial arts champion who, like many, like Chuck Norris, developed a film career and made a whole bunch of movies. And he was very charismatic, and he really knew the foo, and he made a couple movies. What I'm about to talk about is one of them. This is a film directed by Al Adamson of Satan, Sadist, and Blood of Ghastly Horror, and a lot of titles you probably haven't heard of, and for a good reason. It is the tale of, what's his name again? Robert Sand, agent for Dragon. That's D.R.A. You get the rest. Secret agent who has been... His girlfriend has been kidnapped. She's the daughter of a scientist. She's being held for ransom by a man called the Warlock and his kung fu army in a castle in the California hills. And the only person who can stop this nefarious plot to steal a weapon who's going to destroy the world is the Black Samurai. I love this kind of stuff. So I went to the Alamo Drafthouse in Yonkers last night. It was a one-night-only screening of Black Samurai. And as I said, Chris Pajali's been touring this film around the country at various theaters. And it's a new restoration of the R-rated cut of this film. Originally, it was R-rated, and then later it was cut down to a PG to be on double bills or triple bills with some other more family-friendly fare. And if you ever saw it on TV growing up, you would have undoubtedly seen the PG cut. And I don't know, it had been on DVD before, and probably VHS, I'm sure. I don't know what cut that was, but at any rate, this is a new restoration of the original version of the movie as played in theaters in 76, 77. So it's got some profanity and some nudity, and the violence is pretty minimal and silly, like pretty silly. And you have Jim Kelly as an ass-kicking badass martial artist, basically, and taking on just armies of bad guys, just henchmen. This film is riddled with henchmen, and it has a lair. The only disappointment I had in Black Samurai was that at no point does Jim Kelly say, "Man, we can't get in there. Man, that's a fortress." I look for that line in any movie since Enter the Dragon, where somebody has to go into a lair that is filled with henchmen. Somebody needs to just refer to it as a fortress at some point. And this place literally was a fortress, so that was kind of a drop ball there. So is it any good? Well, technically, what's good? I found it highly entertaining. I'm not a fan of Al Adamson. He made a lot of movies, and I respect the fact that he made so many movies. He worked so long and got so many movies into theaters and drive-ins in the era where if you made a movie, it went into the theater, and that was pretty much it. So he directed this, and knowing he directed this film made me a little leery of how good it was going to be, but it moves right along. The action is really well shot. It's not artistically shot, but you know how I feel about modern action movies, and if you actually show me what's going on for 90 minutes of action, I'm gonna say this is probably, as I'm a fan of saying, it was better rendered action than the last several Fast and the Furious movies, or all of them for that matter. Jim Kelly knows what he's doing. The stuntmen know what they're doing. Acting would not be one of those things they know what they're doing, but and you have these armies of men of all sizes and shapes, including very, very, very small shapes, who jump off things onto Jim Kelly. It's very cartoony. It's based on a series of novels from the 70s. There were so many of these men's adventure novels, as Chris mentioned in his intro. You had the Destroyer novels, and you had, Mac Bolan, and you had Black Samurai. You had all of these things where they would go on these different adventures in different parts of the world in each book, all inspired by Bond, of course. This is the kind of film, had I seen this when I was a kid on local TV, I would have really had a good time with it. This feels like the kind of thing I would have loved as a weekly TV series as a kid. It plays at more or less that level in terms of its grandiosity. It's not very fancy. Some of it's shot in Hong Kong, very little of it. Most of it's just shot somewhere in California. The bad guy has a really cool castle that he operates out of. But other than that, it's not terribly interestingly shot. The acting is, other than Jim Kelly, is not terribly good. It's mostly just a lot of action, well rendered, a lot of very funny action, a lot of groin-centric action. I found a lot of kicks and punches to the groin, which I may have left the playground, but the playground never left me. So I was giggling every time a little person was beating up on him, and every time he was kicking somebody in the junk. I was laughing. The movie moves right along. I think it's right about 90 minutes, and it's something that probably is attainable right now. This, excuse me, this restoration was done by Televentures Corporation, which is owned by the person whose father made the film. Eventually, I believe there will be a new a new Blu-ray release. Right now, it's just a theatrical thing. So I would say keep an eye out for Black Samurai in your local listings. It ain't going to come to everybody's town. But if it comes to your town, the audience I saw it with, pretty sizable audience for a movie that most people don't know about. Everybody really enjoyed it. There was a lot of laughing at things that were maybe not intended to be funny for the most part. But hey, it's entertaining. If any movie 40-something years later can get people to come out and pay to see it and they have a good time, that's a successful movie. Whether it's Al Adamson or Orson Welles or Billy Wilder or whatever. As far as I'm concerned, if it still entertains, it's a good movie. And I thought Black Samurai was a good movie. So I am disappointed that there were never more than one Black Samurai film. Apparently it was successful in its day, but they never did more. And I would have loved to have seen more relatively low budget Black Samurai adventures because, I don't know, it was simple and it was fun. You just put them in a different spot and have them beat up a bunch of guys again. Put somebody you know's in peril. There you go. Make another Black Samurai. I think Black Samurai is something that would be fun to bring back now, honestly. You don't have a lot of African and American movie series heroes. We've got Black Panther, but so far we've only had the one movie. You had Blade, which they're reviving at some point, I guess. But I would be happy with a whole bunch of stuff like this. Give everybody a film series. I want more good action movies. I don't care what the person looks like. They just need to be able to kick ass, and somebody needs to know how to point a camera at it so I can see it. So now we move on to home video. That was everything I saw in the theater this last weekend. And yes, I neglected probably most of the major releases of the last 2 weeks, but I'm giving you the highlights. And by highlights, I mean the movies that I bothered to go and see. Now we move on to home video. This is something that's available as of Tuesday, today, whenever you're watching this. By the time you watch this, it will be available on the home video platform, service, subscription, channel, format, device of your choice. First up is a movie I saw in the theater, and it is the third film in a series of action films, the Has Fallen action series. Starring Gerard Butler as a Secret Service agent who is protecting the president at some level. This time the president is the subject or the victim or the near victim of an assassination attempt. And wouldn't you know, all signs point to our hero as being the perpetrator. What you gonna do when Angel has fallen? I'm very easily pleased. You do an explosion transition and it makes me smile. So I saw the first film in this series in the theater, and I quite liked it. There was this weird thing, you see this a lot, the more you pay attention, the more you see it, where competing studios put out movies close to each other that are essentially the same thing. And you had Olympus Has Fallen, which was Gerard Butler and I can't even remember his name. Gerard Butler protecting the president when terrorists attacked the White House. And then you had White House Down not too long after that, which was Channing Tatum protecting the president when terrorists attacked the White House. And the president was Jamie Foxx in that one. And I really liked Olympus Has Fallen. I thought it was just a fun, decent, solid bubblegum Saturday matinee action movie. And I thought White House Down was a piece of garbage. So then I was excited when the second film came out, London Has Fallen, which basically is Gerard Butler and the president are in London and terrorists attack and he has to, save the president and stop everything. That one I did not like. That one was just riddled with what I call the disease, which is just visually incomprehensible action. You couldn't see what was going on. It was all shaky and fast cuts and I was just not worth my time. So when I saw a third one was coming, I thought, oh, is it going to be that again? And happily, no. Happily, the third film redeemed the second film for me. So to me, right now, if they don't make any more, I have bookends of good movies. So Angel Has Fallen starts off with Morgan Freeman is the president, and he's on a boat with Gerard Butler, and they're kicking back, and they're off on doing some fishing on a lake somewhere, and all of these drones come in and just lay waste to everything. And the president is not killed, but he's not in good shape, and Gerard Butler emerges, he survives, and suddenly all the clues point to the fact that he was behind this, and he goes on the run. So what it is in this film, he's racing. It's Sid Field, but that can work sometimes. It's a ticking clock. It's he has to prove his innocence before something really bad happens that he sees is going to happen, but nobody will believe him because he's the bad guy they think, and it's him trying to find out who the bad guy is and how to stop this thing. It really works. Something that was teased in the trailers is the fact that, and it's a thing I generally don't like in movies when you meet the parent of the character and they make the character, it was done really well in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and I feel like we've just seen it again and again since then, where it's some kind of iconic older actor, maybe a former star of this kind of thing, who shows up as the parent, and they make the action hero, the untouchable action hero, seem more like a little kid, and there's the strife and all that. So in this film, Butler calls upon his survivalist, wild man in the woods father, played by Nick Nolte, to help shield him from the bad guys and help him take out the bad guys. And boy, this is the most fun I've had with Nolte in a movie in a long time. He's funny, and the things he does are just insane and crazy, and the action is really good. And this movie was just fun. Now, if I gave the movie a demerit, it would be that the second the bad guy, the person who is revealed to be the bad guy, or the bad gal, the second the person shows up who is the villain, ultimately revealed to be the villain in the movie, I was like, well, that's the villain right there. Like, from the moment they show up, it's completely obvious that that's who it is. And sometimes that's fun in a movie because you're watching the villain do their thing on the sly and you're waiting for the hero to catch up, and how is the hero going to catch up? And sometimes it's just annoying because it's like, just it's that person, come on. So I was sort of in the middle on this one. It was very obvious throughout who the bad person was. But that aside, I had a really, really good time with Angel Has Fallen. I was laughing a lot. It was a far funnier movie than I expected. I would say stay into the end credits, or stay. Don't get off your couch. Don't shut it off. Or fast forward when you get to the credits, because there is a mid or post-credit scene that's kind of amusing that's in here. And I don't know. I would be fine with maybe one more of these films. I think they should. Any film series should quit while it's ahead. If the Rambo series has taught us anything, make a good one and stop. Same with Indiana Jones. When you make a really good one that really kind of should be the end, be satisfied with that. Don't keep going. Don't do one sequel too many. I think Olympus, before this year, I would have said did one sequel too many, but then they made a good one again. So it's delicate. So anyway, I think Angel Has Fallen was a lot of fun. And it's a movie I would watch again. And I own the first one. I would watch 1 and 3 again. And 2, I would try to forget ever happened. So we're down to the last film on my list, but I may have more up my sleeve. It's the Arrow Video Corner. Arrow Video, if you watch the show, you've heard me say this, and if you've never watched the show, you're going to hear me say this. Arrow Video is a UK-based video company that releases what I call genre films, what many people call genre films. They release a lot of horror, sci-fi, cult exploitation, action movies on DVD, or on Blu-ray, I should say. And they've been doing it for years in England. They now have a branch in the US. Not all of the same titles get released in both countries. Usually it's UK, US get both releases, but sometimes due to rights issues, it's one or the other. These obviously, I'm talking about US releases that you can find at your local retailer, if you have one. We're very lucky in Keene here to have a retailer that carries all of the Arrow titles. If not, you can go online. Anywhere that sells stuff online has Arrow titles. And for me, Arrow is like Criterion. Arrow is my Criterion. Arrow puts out the kind of movies I like, and it gives them the treatment. The transfers are amazing. The extras are usually pretty voluminous. The packaging is cool. They come with books and inserts and posters and all kinds of stuff. And usually when Arrow releases something, it is the definitive version. If you have a previous version, just the Arrow one's going to be better. If you care. If you just want to watch the movie and you don't care what it looks like, then maybe your old version's better. But if it's a favorite of yours, or if you really care about presentation and goodies, you always want to get the Arrow version. I should probably tell you what I'm going to talk about. Why don't we use the second camera, because the man set it up. He set it up for a crime it didn't commit. We have what I find very fascinating about Arrows. I told you all that other stuff. They put out a lot of movies like, 70s, 80s, sleazy, trashy horror classics, and they put out American Werewolf in London, stuff like that. But they're also having access to the vaults of some of the studios, and they're putting out lesser-known titles by big directors, earlier titles by big directors. They put out The Apartment, Billy Wilder's The Apartment, which is a great movie. Not a lesser-known title, but it's a great movie. And some of his other films. They put out a lot of noir films, and I think they've done a lot of spaghetti westerns, but this may be the first American western that I know of that Arrow has released. This is a film that stars Jimmy Stewart. It is directed by Anthony Mann, and it is Jimmy Stewart and Walter Brennan. Yeah, how are you? They get off a boat in Alaska. They're cowboys. This is sort of the Old West, and they've got a bunch of cattle they're delivering to somewhere way up in Alaska, Dawson City, as a matter of fact. And they hitch on to help drive cattle from point A to point B through the rugged territory, and hijinks ensue in the far country. This is a film that I might have heard the title of this, but I was never one for westerns, for straight-ahead westerns growing up. Until more recent years, I would see the John Wayne stuff on TV, and it didn't interest me, whether it was a Western TV show or movie or anything like that. And then I discovered the spaghetti westerns when I was in junior high or high school, and I really fell in love with those. And in more recent years, I've been sort of more open to watching these straight-ahead westerns. So this is something I'd never seen, so it was completely fresh to me. I didn't read a synopsis. I just popped the disc in and let it unfurl in front of my eyes, or spin in front of my eyes, I guess. And first of all, the transfer is gorgeous. This is a Technicolor film, Technicolor studio film, which means I always feel like studio films from a certain era, from the 30s to the 60s. They were craftsmen. These people were doing their thing day in, day out. They were doing it to the best of their ability. So there was this baseline level of quality that you always got on a studio picture. And you get that, plus a director like Anthony Mann, who did El Cid, and other, he did El Cid later, but he did other things of that caliber. And Technicolor, when it's restored properly like this is, it's just beautiful. You can just freeze the frame and soak in all the colors and how natural the skin tones look and how just amazing this film looks. Shot on location, to my eye. I didn't have time to watch the extras. There's a commentary, there's a big documentary about Anthony Mann, and I believe there's another documentary about the making of the film and/or westerns in general, and the trailer. So not like a ton of extras like Arrow sometimes has, but enough to, the best thing about an extra, sometimes you'll see a movie from a studio where they don't really put together something too specific for this movie, where it'll be, Smokey and the Bandit, and it'll be an extra about, we talk to truckers. Well, yeah, that's great, but what about the movie I just saw? So Arrow, at least, even if there's not a lot of extras, you get extras that give you background on who made the film, who's in the film, or where the film fits in the genre as a whole. So that's what you have on here. It's only a few extras, but they look to be pretty substantial. So I didn't know anything about the movie. The story is Jimmy Stewart and Walter Brennan are partners. They are on the run from the law because they've been accused by somebody who they wronged or wronged them of a crime, so they hop a riverboat or a paddle boat up to Alaska to unload their cattle, and they just hook up with this woman who was on the boat, shielding them from authorities, who runs a saloon and has a cattle ranch up there. I may be confusing two characters. At any rate, There's a woman who runs a saloon. There's a woman who has a cattle ranch. They may be two people. I'm not sure. One thing I noticed while the film was unspooling, this is an old movie, so they front load the credits. You get all your credits up front, and then at the end it says the end and you're out. When the cast list came up, I knew Jimmy Stewart was in it and Walter Brennan, and then you get the list of names and names and names. And I just started laughing because it was like a who's who of character actors from this era. You have, I wrote them down, and pardon me if I look away a little bit. You have John McIntyre, Jack Elam, Kathleen Freeman, Walter Brennan, J.C. Flippin, Harry Morgan, Royal Dano, Ruth Roman, Connie Calvé, and more. If you like movies like me and you like old movies, you're watching this movie and you're like, hey, it's that guy. Hey, it's that guy. Hey, it's that lady. You recognize half the people in this movie, and they are some of the best, most interesting looking and interestingly performing character actors of this era. And it's just a joy to see them all in this movie. John McIntyre plays this nasty local sheriff. Jack Elam's one of his henchmen. Harry Morgan's in it. Most of these people play not nice people. And I'm not going to say that Jimmy Stewart is the squeaky clean hero in this movie either, because there's a moment, don't want to give anything away, but there's a moment in this film where they're going through the Alaskan tundra, wilderness, whatever, through the mountains, which is not tundra, and Jimmy Stewart is explaining how avalanches work. And he explains it to everybody, and then a little later something happens, and this avalanche falls, and it wipes out half the people in the caravan, including his boss. And he's very nonchalant about it. And Walter Brennan or somebody says to him, aren't you going to go and help them? And he was like, yeah, I warned him. And he walks off. And I was like, oh my God. Jimmy Stewart basically was just like, they're all dead now. Who cares? I'm going to get my money. And there's a lot of stuff like that in this movie. There are moments of badassery, and there are light moments, and there's a little comic relief here and there. And Walter Brennan is just fun to listen to. I was reminded recently that Walter Brennan is actually relatively local to here. I mean, man's long dead, but he was from, I think, Framingham, Massachusetts. So I never would have picked that up in his accent. I always think of him as a Southern guy or an old Western guy, but he was a Massachusetts man. So the film looks great. It's a solid Western. Like any good Western, it's not just about cowpokes and lariats and getting the cattle from point A to point B. It's about human nature, and it's about the basic human interactions and love and lust and theft and wronging rights and righting wrongs and all sorts of things like that. I had a really good time with this movie. I watched it, you'd think I would have a stellar AV setup where I live, but I don't. I don't have a terribly big TV that I'm watching these things on. It's a nice sized HD set. On the weekends, I have an outstanding TV that I look at. But I was watching this on my weekday TV. If you have any size of monitor, this movie is going to look amazing. I would have loved to have seen this in a theater because you get these shots of the landscape and the mountains, and the sense of scale is immense. Even where they're in this old West town or this old Alaska town, and the mountains just tower over everything in the background. It's a really good movie that I'm glad I finally discovered thanks to Arrow. So this is out now. Like I say, I'm playing catch up with everything here. So everything I want to talk about for the next couple of weeks is just already out. So you can just go and get it immediately. You can order it now. You can run out and buy it now if you're lucky enough to have a store that carries physical media, but it's all out. There's a bunch more Arrow stuff I have to talk about coming up. At Slaughterhouse-5, the classic, Jake Speed, which is a movie I always remember seeing on HBO as a kid and never actually watching. RoboCop just came out, like a ridiculously deluxe set for RoboCop. And I'm going to try to get caught up on all this stuff and at least do one of these a week until I am caught up. Flowers in the Attic is another one that's actually a couple weeks old. There's a lot of Arrow coming your way out of my mouth pretty soon. So we only have a few minutes left. I will talk about one more movie. Speaking of video, this kind of falls into that category. Over the weekend, Milady and I watched a film that she'd never seen and I had, but I hadn't seen in a long time. And it falls into the category of, we're talking about Thanksgiving horror movies. And there are a couple. There's one called Thanksgiving, apparently about a killer turkey. There's the Eli Roth Thanksgiving spoof trailer from the Grindhouse movie. There's one called Blood Rage, which I've never seen, which actually Arrow has out. That's a Thanksgiving set horror film. And then there's the movie I'm going to talk about. There's no clip, there's no trailer. This is just me yapping for a minute or two. It's a movie that Something Weird has had out for years called Blood Freak. It's terrible. It's really bad. If you like normal movies, you probably would not sit through this. It's a good movie to sit and watch with friends because it's ridiculous. It's if you're like me, watch it alone and have a good time. We watched it, two of us, and had a really great time. It's available on Amazon Prime currently for free if you have Amazon Prime. The transfer is not great. I wonder how authorized it is. It's a lot of digital breakup and pixelation throughout. It was kind of annoying me. So I don't know if it's something weird officially or Image put it up or if just somebody put it up. But if you can put up with that, it's there. Something Weird did put it out on DVD, although I think it's out of print now and probably expensive to find. I can't imagine that somebody, maybe AGFA, because they have a relationship with Something Weird, maybe they'll put it out on Blu-ray. It deserves to stay in print because it's as foolish as it is. So you have this guy, Steve Hawks, European guy, looks like a beefy Elvis on a motorcycle. Meets up with a lady whose car is broken down. She takes him home to thank him. And there's a party full of people just doing every kind of drug you can imagine. This movie, I think, is from like 71 or 72. And he's very moral, and the lady who brought him home is very moral, and they're very, you start hearing Bible references, and you're thinking, is this a Jesus movie? And apparently, the very capsule version of this film, to not bore you or give too many exciting developments away, is that this man is drugged by a woman who wants to spend time with him, who he rebuffs. He then takes a job at a turkey plant and is offered a little extra money to eat turkey that's been given strange growth hormones and things like that, because the USDA says it has to be, tested on people. And the combination of the drug he had, which makes him very ravenously hungry, and this tainted meat throws him into a seizure, and he wakes up as, well, he's kind of a, the way I would, he's a turkey man. Not like a guy dressed like a turkey. He is like the beefy, European Elvis guy, but with a turkey head. And you hear that a lot. And he's hungry and he needs blood. And it is a like paper mache turkey head that doesn't even look like a turkey. It kind of looks more like a chicken, frankly. And it's him going around and just taking people out and crudely like feasting upon their sanguinary sensations in order to keep going. And it's friggin' ridiculous. It's very poorly made. There's a lot of shaky cam in it, and it's not for stylistic effect. The acting is terrible. The editing is bad. The music is kind of cheesy. It's early 70s, so you get the fashions and all that going on. And it's ridiculous. It's like a religious, anti-drug, anti-promiscuity, maybe anti-GMO, ahead of its time movie. But it's a howler, and it's the kind of film where you cannot believe what you're seeing. You want to know whether they're serious or not. You have the guy who directed the movie coming in throughout, apparently in a bathrobe in front of a wood paneling, and behind him, poorly framed, reading off the script, talking about all these moral things and the moral lessons and what's going on in the story. And then toward the end, he's talking about the danger of using your body as a mixing bowl for chemicals as he's chain smoking, and he starts coughing, and he goes into a coughing fit that's so bad they just fade out on him. And it's so perfect. You're like, they have to have been intending this to be funny, right? I don't know that they were. I'm not sure. I need to see if anybody who did this film survived long enough to be interviewed by somebody to say the classic, what were you thinking? Because it's ridiculous. So the film, we don't have a lower third or anything. The film is called Blood Freak. It's out there if you want to find it. It's Blood Freak from the early 70s. It's crazy. If you want the most inappropriate thing or an inappropriate thing to watch with your family and friends on Thanksgiving or leading up to Thanksgiving, that's why we watched it. It will be a conversation starter. It may end conversations amongst your family and yourself. You may not be invited back for Thanksgiving, which might be something you're looking for. So Blood Freak might be the key to freeing up your Thanksgiving for the next few years. That's out there now. So we're wrapping up things here pretty quickly. So some things that are coming out that I have yet to see. 21 Bridges, new film coming out. Police crime drama, that is coming out this weekend. Knives Out is coming out finally. A film I have seen the trailer for what seems like 6 months in front of every single film I've gone to see. It's actually turned me against the movie. I kind of hate a movie I haven't seen yet because I'm sick of the trailer. And A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the new, I wouldn't call it a biopic, but based on a true story film starring Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers, being interviewed sort of late in his life by a reporter doing a profile on him. That looks quite good. Those were both playing at the Alamo Drafthouse, Yonkers, when I was there yesterday, but I don't know if those are in general release yet. But if they are, they are. And if not, Knives Out, I think, is a next week release. So also some things on video that I've already talked about. So I'm just going to wrap it up, because I've been yapping long enough and we're down to like 2 minutes. So I will see you next week, if everything goes right, and I will have more to talk about, hopefully more titles to talk about. If not, you see, obviously I can talk for an hour about almost nothing. I am Mark, I am the Cinemaniac, and I will see you at the movies. Bye.